Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're gonna try to shortcut through David Allen's Getting Things Done, the productivity Bible that everyone's talking about. So we're gonna extract these golden nuggets, these aha moments that can seriously transform how you work. And live, it'll be like you're right here with us dissecting the brilliance of GTD.
And one thing I think is really intriguing about this book is that it's less about ticking off tasks and more about achieving this Zen-like state, what Alan calls mind like water.
Okay. I'll admit, when I first heard that phrase, I thought, okay, a bit woo-woo, maybe.
Yeah.
But then I really dug into it, and Alan describes it as this ability to react calmly and effectively to whatever's thrown at you, no matter how crazy things get.
It's like that martial arts principle, right?
Yeah.
Where you don't try to force things, but instead you harness energy and redirect it.
Yeah.
In the workplace, that translates to not getting bogged down by the constant influx of demands, but staying fluid and focused.
And that's so relevant now, isn't it? I mean,
true.
Think about it. You're constantly bombarded with emails, messages, project updates.
It's easy to feel like you're drowning.
Yeah.
Exactly. Alan really nails the challenges of modern work, how those boundaries between work and life have blurred.
Right.
We're always on, and projects never seem to truly end. It's no wonder so many people are stressed and overwhelmed.
So how does GTD address this? Well, it offers this 5-stage methodology: capture, process, organize, review, and do.
Right.
That, when applied consistently, creates a system for achieving that mind-like water state.
And it's not about becoming some kind of robotic productivity machine.
Right.
It's about reclaiming control, reducing that mental clutter, and ultimately freeing yourself up to focus on what truly matters.
Okay, so let's dive into the first stage, capture.
Yeah.
This is all about getting everything out of your head and into a system you trust. Alan compares it to having a leaky bucket. If you don't collect those to-dos somewhere, they just keep draining your mental energy.
And this is where the 2-minute rule comes in.
Yeah.
But let's go a bit deeper than the surface level
Yeah.
here. How do you actually apply this in different work settings?
Right.
If you're in a high-speed, deadline-driven environment,
Right.
2 minutes might feel like an eternity.
Right. So maybe you adjust it. Maybe it's a 30-second rule.
Right.
Or even a one-touch rule. The point is to prevent those tiny tasks from piling up and taking up precious mental space.
Exactly. It's about adapting the principle to fit your own work style and context. Now, for those tasks that take more than 2 minutes,
you delegate or defer. If someone else can handle it, offload it.
Yes.
If not, then it's time to get organized. This is where Alan's system gets really interesting and where he ditches the traditional daily to-do list.
Those daily lists, they can be so rigid and often end up stressing you out more.
Yeah.
Instead, Alan advocates for organizing actions by context.
Right.
Things you can do at a computer, on calls, errands, and so on.
It's about creating options for yourself, right?
Yes.
So if you find yourself with 10 minutes before a meeting instead of mindlessly scrolling, you can pull up your calls list.
Right.
And knock a few things out.
What's brilliant about this is that it promotes flexibility and allows you to be more intentional with your time no matter where you are or how much time you have.
Right.
You're not bound by a static list that quickly becomes irrelevant.
Okay. But even the best organized system needs a tune-up every now and then, which brings us to the review stage.
Right.
And that all-important weekly review.
This is where so many systems fall apart.
Right.
Life gets in the way, and suddenly it's been weeks since we've looked at our lists.
Yeah.
But this weekly review is absolutely crucial for maintaining that mind-like water state that we talked about earlier.
So for those listening who haven't quite embraced the weekly review yet, why is it so important? What's the connection to that calm, clear mental state that Alan emphasizes?
It's all about regularly clearing the mental decks.
Okay.
During your weekly review, you go through everything you've captured, reassess your priorities, and ensure nothing slipped through the cracks. Think of it like a mental detox.
Yeah.
By doing this consistently, you're less likely to get caught off guard by those, oh, shoot, I forgot about that, moments that can send your stress levels soaring.
It's like that feeling after a good decluttering session, right?
Yeah.
Your space feels lighter and you can actually breathe. That's what the weekly review does for your mind.
Precisely. And it's this mental clarity that allows you to move into the do stage with more focus and intention.
Right.
But Alan doesn't just leave you hanging there. He provides a framework for choosing the right action in the moment based on 4 key criteria.
Right.
Context, time available, energy available, and priority.
This is where GTD goes beyond simple task management and becomes more of a decision-making tool.
Right.
It's about being mindful of your current state and choosing the most effective action for that moment.
So instead of feeling overwhelmed by a massive to-do list, you can calmly assess your context and choose a task that aligns with your energy level and available time. It's about working with yourself, not against yourself.
Now that brings us to natural planning, which is where GTD really shines, in my opinion.
Yeah.
This is where Alan lays out a 5-step process for tackling any project, big or small. And, I used to be skeptical of planning. It felt so rigid and time-consuming.
Right. Conventional planning often focuses on creating these elaborate Gantt charts and timelines.
Yeah.
Which can be overwhelming for many people.
Exactly. But Alan's approach is much more organic and flexible. He uses this great example of planning a vacation.
Yes.
Yeah.
A much more relatable example than, say, launching a new product line.
Exactly. So the first step is defining your purpose. Why are you taking this vacation?
Right.
Is it for relaxation, adventure, quality time with loved ones?
Right.
Then you create a vision. What does your ideal vacation look like? Where are you going? What are you doing?
And then you move into brainstorming.
Okay.
Letting your imagination run wild and capturing all the possibilities.
Right.
This is where you really let loose and don't censor yourself.
Once you have a good collection of ideas, you organize them, making decisions about what's feasible.
Yeah.
And most important to you. You might create lists, timelines, or even mood boards, whatever helps you visualize the plan.
And finally, you break the project down into next actions, those concrete, actionable steps you can start taking right now.
And this is where it all comes full circle, right?
Okay.
By defining those next actions, you're essentially creating a roadmap for achieving your vision.
Yes.
No matter how big or small the project.
And it's not about creating a perfect plan. It's about having enough structure to get you moving and keep you on track. It's about that sense of progress.
Yeah.
Of actually taking steps towards what you want to achieve.
It's funny, but one of the biggest revelations I had with GTD is that procrastination often stems from a lack of clarity about the next action. If you don't know what to do next, it's easy to just avoid the task altogether.
It's like standing at the bottom of a mountain and feeling overwhelmed by the climb, right? But if you focus on just taking that first step, the whole task feels much less daunting.
It's so true. I've found that just the act of deciding on that next action, even if it's something small, can dramatically reduce my stress and increase my motivation.
And that brings us to one of the most powerful concepts in GTD.
Yeah.
The power of the next action decision.
Yeah.
It's not just about doing. It's about deciding. It's about creating options for yourself so that you can always choose something meaningful and productive to do, no matter your context or energy level.
This is where GTD really clicks for me.
Yeah.
The power of choice.
Yeah.
You're no longer a slave to your to-do list, reacting to whatever screams the loudest.
You're in control.
Yeah.
You're making conscious decisions about how to spend your time and energy based on your priorities in your current context.
And that sense of control can be incredibly empowering, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's about moving from that feeling of overwhelm and reactivity to a state of relaxed control and proactivity.
It's about reclaiming your time and energy and using them to create the life you want.
Exactly. And this idea of reclaiming control, it doesn't just impact you as an individual. Alan argues that these GTD practices can actually ripple outwards and contribute to a more positive and productive organizational culture.
That's something I've witnessed firsthand. In previous workplaces where things felt chaotic and reactive, it was like everyone was constantly putting out fires. But when people have a system for managing their own work, it creates a sense of calm and allows for more strategic thinking.
It's like the difference between a jazz band where everyone's improvising wildly and an orchestra playing a beautifully orchestrated symphony. Both can be amazing in their own right. But the orchestra's success depends on each musician understanding their part and playing it in harmony with the others.
That's a great analogy. Okay, so we've explored the core principles of GTD, but what about those times when we get stuck? Those moments when we're staring at a task and just can't seem to get started, even though we know we need to.
Procrastination.
Yeah.
Alan has some fascinating insights into this universal struggle. One of his key observations is that procrastination often stems from a fear of incompletion. We avoid tasks because we're afraid of failing or not doing them perfectly.
Oh, I totally relate to that. It's like that feeling of, well, if I can't do it perfectly, why even bother?
Right.
But that kind of thinking can be paralyzing.
Absolutely. And that's where breaking tasks down into those smaller next actions can be so helpful. Instead of focusing on the overwhelming enormity of the task, you shift your focus to that very next step, which feels much more manageable.
It's like the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Exactly.
But even when we know what to do next, sometimes we just don't feel like doing it.
Right.
We're tired, we're distracted, or we'd rather be doing something else.
This is where Alan's concept of context comes in.
Right.
Remember those context lists we talked about earlier? At computer, on calls, errands?
Yeah.
Well, he encourages us to choose actions that are appropriate for our current context, our location, our energy level, and our available resources.
So instead of beating yourself up for not feeling motivated to tackle a complex task when you're exhausted, you can simply look at your low-energy context list and choose something that requires less mental bandwidth.
Exactly. And that's something that a traditional to-do list just can't account for.
Right.
It's about being flexible and working with yourself, not against yourself.
Another key concept in GTD is having a trusted system.
Yes.
This is where you collect and organize all those next actions, projects, and ideas that we've been talking about.
And it really can be anything that works for you. A notebook, a smartphone app, a whiteboard, even a stack of index cards. The key is that it's a system you rely on to hold your commitments and remind you of what needs to be done.
It's like having an external brain, right? You're offloading all that mental clutter so that your mind is free to focus on the task at hand.
And that's what allows you to achieve that mind like water state that we discussed earlier. You're no longer trying to hold everything in your head, constantly worrying about forgetting something. You have a system you trust, so you can relax and be present in the moment.
You know, it's interesting. One of the biggest challenges people face when they first start implementing GTD is the sheer volume of stuff they have to process.
Oh, absolutely. It can be quite daunting to look at a mountain of paperwork, emails and voicemails, and know that you need to go through each and every item. It's like tackling a massive cleaning project. Where do you even begin?
But here's the thing. Once you start processing, you'll find that a lot of that stuff can be eliminated, delegated, or deferred.
Like decluttering a closet. Right? You might be surprised by how much you can actually get rid of. And as you start to clear out the clutter, you'll start to feel lighter and more in control.
And that sense of control, it can be contagious. Once you start implementing GTD in one area of your life, you'll naturally want to apply it to other areas as well.
It's like that domino effect. Once you knock over the first one, the rest start falling into place. But it's important to remember that GTD is not a one-size-fits-all solution. You'll need to adapt it to your own needs and preferences.
And that's one of the beauties of the system. It's flexible and customizable. You can use whatever tools and techniques work best for you. The key is to find a way to make it your own and stick with it.
And that's where a lot of people get tripped up. They try to implement GTD perfectly. And when they inevitably slip up, they give up altogether.
You know, it's like anything new you're trying to learn there's going to be a learning curve. You're going to make mistakes. The important thing is to not get discouraged and to keep practicing.
Exactly. GTD is not about perfection. It's about progress. It's about getting a little bit better each day.
And speaking of practice, one of the most important things you can do to make GTD work for you is to establish a regular review routine. This is where you set aside some dedicated time to go through your system, reassess your priorities, and make sure everything is captured and organized.
And this review doesn't have to be a major ordeal. It can be as simple as spending 15 minutes at the end of each day or an hour at the end of each week going through your lists and clearing your head.
You know, it's like taking your car in for regular maintenance. It might feel like a hassle at the time, but it prevents bigger problems down the road.
Precisely. And as you start to review your system regularly, you'll find that it becomes easier and easier to stay on top of your commitments and maintain that sense of control and clarity.
And that clarity, it can be so freeing when you're not constantly feeling overwhelmed by your to-do list. You have more mental space to focus on the things that really matter. Your goals, your values, and your passions.
It's like finally having that clear open space in your house where you can relax and be yourself. You're no longer weighed down by all that clutter.
And speaking of clearing out clutter, one of the most common challenges people face when implementing GTD is dealing with all those tasks that are out of their immediate control.
Oh, yes, those waiting for situations. They can be incredibly frustrating.
Right.
You're not actively working on the task.
Right.
But it's still taking up mental space. Right.
It's like having a bunch of balls in the air, waiting for someone to toss them back.
Yeah.
You're not juggling them actively, but you're still acutely aware of them.
Exactly. And this is where the waiting for list comes in.
Okay.
This is where you park those tasks, and just as importantly, you track who you're waiting on and what you're waiting for.
So it's like creating a holding pen for those tasks, so they're not cluttering up your mind or your active project lists.
Right.
And by tracking who you're waiting on, you're setting yourself up to be more proactive.
Right. Instead of just passively waiting, you can take steps to nudge things along.
Right.
For example, if you're waiting on a colleague to send you some data for a report, you can send a friendly reminder email or give them a call.
This does two things. It gets the task out of your head.
Yes.
And it helps prevent those last-minute scramble situations where you're suddenly panicking because you were relying on someone else.
And speaking of managing your workload, another tool from getting things done that can be incredibly helpful is the someday maybe list.
Okay.
This is where you capture those dreams and aspirations.
Right.
The things you want to do someday, but not right now.
It's like that mental attic, right? Where you store all those boxes of things you're not quite ready to part with, but don't need to access on a daily basis.
Exactly. It could be anything from learning a new language to taking a cooking class to writing a novel. It's a place to capture those ideas that spark your interest and ignite your imagination, but that you're not yet ready to commit to.
You know, I think a lot of people struggle with guilt around those someday items.
Yeah.
They feel like they should be doing more, achieving more.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Those dreams and aspirations are important. They give us something to look forward to, something to strive for.
Yeah.
And by capturing them on a someday maybe list,
you're
acknowledging their importance without feeling pressured to act on them right now.
It's like giving yourself permission to dream and explore without the burden of obligation.
And sometimes those someday maybe items can actually morph into real projects as you review your list regularly.
Right.
You might find that your priorities shift.
All right.
Or you might stumble upon an opportunity that makes one of those dreams suddenly feel within reach.
It's like planting seeds in a garden, right?
Exactly.
Some might sprout right away, while others might take a bit longer to germinate.
But the important thing is to give them a place to grow.
Right.
Now, one thing that Alan emphasizes is keeping your someday maybe list separate from your active project lists.
Right, because if those someday maybe items are mixed in with your current projects, they can create a sense of overwhelm and distraction.
It's like trying to work in a cluttered office, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to focus when you're surrounded by stuff that's not relevant to the task at hand.
So the someday maybe list is like a designated space for those dreams and aspirations where they can be nurtured and explored without cluttering up your current workflow.
And during your weekly review, you can take some time to revisit your someday maybe list and see if there's anything on there that you're ready to move to your active project list.
It's like checking in on those seeds you planted to see if any of them have sprouted.
Yeah.
And if something has happened, you can start tending to it and helping it grow.
But if nothing has sprouted yet, you don't need to worry.
Right.
You can simply leave it on the someday maybe list, knowing that it's there waiting for you when the time is right.
And that, my friend, is a very powerful thing.
Yeah.
It's about giving yourself permission to dream, to explore, and to create without the pressure of having to do it all right now.
It's about embracing the possibilities and trusting that the right opportunities will emerge at the right time.
And I think that's a beautiful way to approach life, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But let's be real. We live in a world that's constantly bombarding us with information demands and distractions.
Yeah.
It can be incredibly challenging to stay focused and to make time for those things that are truly important to us.
Right.
And that's why having a system like GTD can be so valuable.
Yeah.
It's like having a compass to guide you through the wilderness, helping you stay on course and avoid getting lost in the chaos.
You know, I think a lot of people view productivity systems as being restrictive or robotic.
Right.
But GCD feels more like a framework for freedom.
I agree. It's about creating structure and clarity so that you can have more choice and flexibility in your life.
Right.
It's about reclaiming your time and energy and using them to create the life you want.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, exploring various tools and techniques from GTD.
Right.
But let's take a step back and revisit those core principles that underpin the system.
What are the key takeaways that we want our listeners to walk away with?
Well, I think one of the most important things to remember is that GTD is not just about getting more done. It's about achieving that state of mind like water that we talked about earlier.
Right. It's about cultivating that clear, calm, and responsive mental state that allows you to tackle whatever comes your way with ease and efficiency.
And that state of mind isn't something that happens by accident.
Right.
It's something you cultivate through consistent practice and the application of those GTD principles.
And those principles, as we've discussed, are all about capturing everything.
Right.
Making those next action decisions. Organizing your commitments. Reviewing your system regularly.
Right.
And trusting yourself to make the right choices in the moment.
And when you apply those principles consistently, you'll find that you're not just getting more done, but you're actually experiencing a profound shift in your relationship to work and to life in general.
You're moving from a state of overwhelm and reactivity to a state of relaxed control and proactivity.
You're no longer at the mercy of your inbox, your to-do list, or the demands of others. You're in the driver's seat, making conscious choices about how you spend your time and energy.
And that, my friend, can be an incredibly empowering feeling.
It's like finally breaking free from the chains that have been holding you back and stepping into your full potential.
And that, I believe, is what GTD is all about.
So for anyone listening who's feeling inspired to actually dive into GTD, what's that one thing they could do today to start experiencing those benefits we've been talking about?
You know, it all starts with capturing.
Right.
Get those swirling thoughts and to-dos out of your head and into a system you trust. It really doesn't have to be complicated. A simple notebook, a notes app on your phone, whatever works for you, just start writing everything down.
You know, it's like decluttering your mind. That mental space suddenly feels a lot lighter. And once you have it all out in front of you, then you can start making decisions about what to do with it.
Precisely. That's where the next action decision comes in.
Right.
For each item you've captured, ask yourself, what's the very next physical action I need to take to move this forward? Even if you don't have time to do it right away. Simply defining that next action can be incredibly freeing.
Because you're no longer just staring at this vague, overwhelming task.
Right.
You have a concrete starting point.
Exactly. It's like having a map. Instead of just knowing the destination.
Right.
You might not be able to travel the whole route today, but at least you know where to begin. And that sense of direction is key to building momentum.
So to sum up, if you want to tap into the power of getting things done, start by capturing everything that's on your mind and then defining the next action for each item. Trust me, your mind will thank you.
And remember, it's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about making progress. Just take it one step at a time and you'll be amazed by what you can accomplish.
This has been such a great deep dive. I always feel more energized and in control after revisiting getting things done.
Me too. It truly is a timeless system, and it's amazing how relevant it remains, even in our ever-changing world.
And for our listeners, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What are some of your favorite GTD tips and tricks? Have you experienced that mind-like water state? Share your insights with us on social media using #TheDeepDive.
And of course, if you're looking to explore GTD further, we highly recommend checking out David Allen's website and his wealth of resources, including books, articles, and workshops.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep getting things done.